Hi, I'm Pam, and I'm here to talk about retro video games. So recently, I've just completed a game that's been on my personal games I should really playlist for over 20 years, and I thought people might be interested in what I have to say about it. That game, of course, is Silent Hill, the original game by Konami that came out in 1999 on the PlayStation 1. And while I didn't get my hands on this game immediately upon it coming out, I did borrow it from a friend not too much later, probably in 2000 or 2001. And my personal history with the game was that I borrowed it from my friend and started it up, thought it was really cool, got to the cafe, got that radio, and every time that radio made noise to signal that an enemy was nearby, I would get so freaked out that I would just turn the game off. And I tried it a couple times, could never manage to gather up the will to continue on. So my first attempt at Silent Hill 1 was very, very short. Years later, maybe 10 years ago, I picked up the game for PlayStation 1 for myself, thought I'd try to play it, ran into basically the same issue, was scared of the radio, also wasn't a big fan of the tank controls, so that attempt also didn't go very far. This time, though, I decided I was going to play through it with my partner, who has also always wanted to play this game, but never played it. I figure having someone sitting beside me would make it much less scary, which was in fact true. I was very rarely scared playing through Silent Hill 1 this time, or watching him play. However, I was frustrated most of the time. It's way harder to be scared when you just spend most of your time being mad at the game. I knew from the get-go that I hated tank controls, but I figured that the vibes and the atmosphere and the story would manage to get me through, push through my hatred for tank controls. I'm a big fan of the PlayStation 1, but honestly, very little of the stuff I like from it is in 3D. The early 3D holds very little appeal to me, and it turned out Silent Hill did fall into that trap of having controls and camera so frustrating and baffling that most of the time what good things there were in the game, and there are a lot of good things in the game, couldn't quite push me through the frustration over having to actually control it or even watch someone else play it. So I wanted to start off with a positive thing and something I liked about the game from the get-go, and that is the game's introduction. But actually, before we get to the game's introduction, I have to make a complaint to start off, actually. So most PlayStation 1 games or other consoles, most consoles around this time, have an attract mode or a demo mode. So when you turn on your console, you get to the start screen. If you just leave it idle, it plays a little video for you. I talk about this one a lot, but the Parasite Eve one comes on, and it's basically like a trailer for what you're going to get in the game. It's a whole bunch of scenes from later on in the game, all the beautiful cutscenes put into one thing, showing you what you have to look forward to. So as I was playing Silent Hill, we often had the console just running while we were, making drinks or doing something before we actually started to play. I assumed that it had an attract mode, which was just a bunch of compilations of cutscenes from later in the game, which, yes, but also it kind of serves as the game's introduction at the same time, which makes things very confusing. It wasn't until I had actually finished the game that I went back and rewatched that whole sort of attract mode again, and then I could pick out what was new footage that was actually showing you an intro to the game and what was from later. This second image you see in this thing. So little editor's note here. This scene I'm referring to actually changes based on whether or not you've beaten the game and what ending you've got. As I said, I was mostly analyzing this scene after I had beaten the game, but when I took my memory card out of my PlayStation and replayed it back, this scene actually shows Harry and his now dead wife finding Cheryl on the side of the road 7 years ago. And after I beat the game, it changed to show Harry and Sybil with their new Silent Hill baby that they picked up.
So I've cut out what I was about to say about it being weird that they show the end of the good ending in this intro, since they don't if you haven't played it. But the rest of what I have to say about the intro still applies.
Then it has a bunch of other scenes of other characters from the game, from the credits of the game, but then interspersed into that is also a scene of Cheryl and Harry driving down the highway on their way to Silent Hill, them being followed by the cop, them seeing a girl run out into the road or be standing in the road and swerve off into an accident. So that scene is like half trailer, half intro. Once you actually press the start button, you only get about a 10-second intro, which shows Harry crashed on the side of the road with an empty passenger seat, and then he gets out and starts looking for his daughter. So I found that a pretty wild choice for what content the game presents to you before it even starts. But once you get past that, once you actually press start a new game file, the intro is super, super effective. I love how you see Harry going through the town, all of the fog everywhere, the just brief outline of Cheryl going through, running into the town, following her. I love once you get to the alley and just all the different fixed camera angles, use of like Dutch camera angles, how it's just getting visibly darker and darker as you go further into the alley. Really impeccable in terms of vibes and setting up the atmosphere for what's to come. For some reason, Harry is perplexed by the appearance of a wheelchair, which is something that's going to happen throughout the game, which I found something rather funny to riff on as we were playing. And then when you get to sort of the end of this, you get into an unwinnable situation where you're attacked by these weird little monster men with knives, and you can't beat this fight, and you have to die, or at least be attacked so that you can wake up somewhere else in the diner. You wake up to a hot cop in very tight leather pants who's asking you what's going on here. You're trying to get her to help you find your daughter. She's trying to go get help to find out what's going on in the town. And then, in an absolutely bonkers decision, this cop hands you a gun. Ma'am, officer, you can't just hand a gun to a strange man. But I guess it's good that we have the gun so that we can do a real shit job of shooting at enemies. So then we get down to exploring the town, and here I actually started to appreciate the radio. Again, I had someone beside me, less reason to be scared. I really like how the radio works, how it lets you know when an enemy is nearby. And it's not just the letting you know when the enemy is nearby that's the most useful, it's letting you know when an enemy is actually dead. Because a lot of the time, you'll fight something, it'll fall on the ground, but it's not quite dead yet, and you need to either shoot it or hit it again, or do my favorite thing, which is just stomp it. It is pretty satisfying to stomp on enemies and hear the radio go silent. When I get out to exploring the town, this also brings up one of my absolute favorite things about the game, and that is the map. It has such a good map, and I just appreciate it so much. It's pretty low res, but it gives you a brilliant outline of the town. It's got important things labeled on it, and the coolest thing is it looks like Harry's just taking a red pen and annotating it as he goes. When you figure out, oh, I have to go to the school, he circles the school on the map. When you try to open a door and it's locked, it'll notate that it's locked or that it's jammed and you can't go through it. You can see which way you can go in and out of doors, which comes into play a lot at the school and at the hospital and later places. Just super, super useful map, and I love how it's just constantly updating as you go. It's good that the map is so nice to look at because I was looking at it so often. Between the fog and the camera being weird and controlling Harry feel like controlling a drunk 300-pound toddler, I found myself getting turned around a lot, and whether I was playing or Dylan was playing, we were checking that map constantly. I suppose my biggest complaint about the game overall is that it just feels bad to play. There's just this bit of delay in everything when you start to run, when you stop running, when you try to move the camera. It does let you control the camera on your own, which right stick being a thing is a pretty impressive thing to do, and it works decently well, but just the movement is not fun at all to control and just feels sluggish and unresponsive. The combat, similarly, doesn't feel very good. I understand Harry's not supposed to be some super soldier. He's just an everyday writer who's looking for his missing daughter, but doing combat with him feels pretty bad most of the time and ended up with both of us yelling at him about how bad of a job he was doing at hitting what we were trying to aim at. The first big area we get to after the streets of Silent Hill is the school. And this is where I pretty much realized I probably wasn't going to be having a good time with this. This is where the sort of combat and movement issues just really started coming to a head for me. This area on its own is far too expansive. Far too many doors which are jammed, far too much going up and down between the 3 levels, a lot of backtracking, some very insane puzzles to solve in order to get anywhere, and so many lockers that you can't even interact with when you think that you should be searching them for bullets and health items. There's also all those weird little enemies with their knives who just keep burying their heads in Harry's crotch, which is very uncomfortable. I found the school just took a long time to complete. However, the next area, or the next big area that you go to after you get out of the school, I think you visit the church, you go through this town some more, is the hospital. And the hospital is actually an area I quite enjoyed. I found the size of it was ideal. There was lots of exploring to do, but it wasn't too much, which was really nice. I just enjoyed the sort of layout and the different kinds of rooms, and there was a little more to interact with there. This is also where you meet Lisa, the nurse, who's probably my favorite character in the game, and the only one who seems to be reacting to things in an appropriate manner. The hospital is also where you get the hammer, which is absolutely the best weapon in the game. Harry is shit with a knife or a lead pipe or most of the guns, but you give him a giant sledgehammer and he is just a nurse-killing machine. It is a little bit upsetting that the time I enjoy myself most in this game is when I'm hammering doctors and nurses with a giant hammer, and I don't know what that says about me. But this is the only time in the game where combat is actually a good time and you feel like you're in any way competent at what you're doing. Of course, that kind of goes away later when you try to hit like a dog or a flying enemy or even a giant cockroach on the floor with the hammer and you find out you're again back to being useless. But give me a parasite-ridden doctor or nurse, and Harry the Hammer just kicks some ass. So as you're exploring each place, and this happens in the town, this happens in the school, in the hospital, a bunch of other places, you'll often find yourself in an Otherworld where Harry feels like he might be dreaming, but it basically takes the area where you are and turns it into like this dark and rusted and bloody version of what you were seeing. And this, I thought, was a really cool concept. It gives a way of showing an area which has become familiar and twisting it into something dark and disturbing. It also gives them a way to block off or give access to new areas of the levels based on whether you're in the normal world or the Otherworld. The music in the Otherworld sections is absolutely amazing. It's definitely 9 Inch Nails inspired. It's just this grimy, industrial, wailing and clanging noises. It's truly upsetting a lot of the time while you're in the Otherworld just because of the music, and I really, really love it. It often builds up in such a way that you think something big is going to happen, but it's really just the music that's being the star at that point, and it's often when things are a little more quiet when things get dramatic in other ways. The music just does a lot of heavy lifting in these sections, and yeah, it's definitely one of the best parts of the game for me. Sadly, once we left the hospital, most of the other areas of the game fell a little short for me. You spend a lot of time in the sewers, and when are sewers ever fun? It's just dark and there's a bunch of annoying enemies in there. You go to an abandoned mall, which we spent almost no time at all in. We were probably in there for less than 5 minutes. I don't know if we just didn't explore or whether that was all there was to do. There's a sort of resort part of the town that ends up in a carnival, which is creepy, but wasn't my favorite. And one of the most annoying areas for me was the trek down to the lighthouse. At this point, we were really tired of combat, so we spent most of the time with our light off trying to avoid enemies. And that's also annoying because you can't look at your map with your light off, so you have to turn your light off, run where you think you're supposed to go, turn it on quick, look at the map, see if you're actually where you are. That was one of the most confusing and irritating areas to navigate. It's also filled with optional content, which we did most of, I think. You go to a bar and a convenience store and a motel and find out there's this whole drug side plot to the game, which I didn't really think added anything. At one point, you also have to fight Sybil, the cop, who has some kind of parasite in her somehow. This fight was difficult, and I was just looking for the tip. I just went online, looked for tips on the fight, and found out how you can get the good ending with her, which was absolute nonsense that I don't think anyone would have thought of themselves. But I had picked up the red goo or blood from the floor in the hospital, so we were able to save Sybil, which was nice and allowed us to get the good plus ending when we finally got there. But I will talk about story at the end. Now, once we get to the final area of the game, I think it does kick things up a notch in terms of interest, and this is Nowhere, which is an interesting area that's just a big amalgamation of all the areas you've been to before. So when you first get there, it looks like you're in the school, but as you go through doors, you find like, oh, now I'm in the hospital. Oh, now I'm in the antique store. So it takes all of these areas that you become familiar with, and it just sort of twists them around and rearranges the room. So you have to sort of learn them again. And you don't get to use the map in here, which is annoying, but it also really makes you learn the area well. And I really liked the concept of this. I found, this was a good idea for the final area. My problem with it was that it's just a big, long hunt for keys. There are so many locked doors in this area. You unlock one door, and then you get a new key, and then you have to go find what this key is for. There must have been, 10 locked doors that all required different keys or plates or puzzles to solve. It just felt like as we were making progress, and it was just like, oh, nope, here's a whole other floor full of locked doors that you have to find the keys to, which just got a little tiring. Like, I felt like they were kind of running out of ideas by just constantly presenting you with these locked doors, including one that you get a key from out of a bag of jelly beans. I don't know. I did find the puzzles in this area of the game were probably the best ones that made the most logical sense, like way more than the school puzzles. It was just the constant sequence of locked doors that did get annoying. Oh, also at one point we got eaten by a refrigerator and lost 20 minutes of progress, which, fuck you, game. I found Silent Hill, as much as there were aspects of it I liked, just very annoying and frustrating to play. My partner has slightly more patience than I do with these things, so he probably ended up with a controller about 80% of the time, but I also found it very frustrating and annoying to watch someone else play as well. Like, it's one thing if you're going and you're looking at a map in a game every 10 seconds yourself, but watching someone else look at a map every 10 seconds just, gets really old really fast. It's one of those games where I'm just sort of sitting here trying not to backseat game, trying not to be like, give me this controller, I can do it quicker and more efficiently, because I can't do it quicker and more efficiently. Everyone sucks at these controls. There's also a few other mechanical things that just drove me crazy. Being asked constantly, do you want to pick up these bullets? Do you want to pick up this first aid kit? Do you want to pick up this key? Do you want to pick up this item that you can't beat the game without? It's like, yes. Yes, I want to pick it up. There's no inventory management in this game, which I actually really like. No limits, as far as I could tell, on how many items you could have in your inventory. So why would it give me an option to say, no, I don't want to pick up this shotgun? Why wouldn't I want to pick up the fucking shotgun? There also aren't a ton of things in the game that Harry can interact with outside of those pickups. There are things that he can look at, but I felt like the vast majority of things were nothing special.
Nothing special. No need to read any of these books. Nothing useful in the locker. Glucose. No reason to take it. There's a candle stand. Nothing special. Nothing unusual. Normal elementary school bulletin board. Nothing in particular here. Nothing helpful. There's a ship's wheel. Don't worry about that now, though. There's a newspaper. Nothing special. Nothing helpful. No special books here. There's a whiteboard. Nothing special written here. Books are scattered around the desk. Nothing else special here. There is a clock. Nothing special.
There were so many items that Harry took the time to look at, but his only comment was, nothing special. Like, what is the point of interacting with those things at all? Though I do now find myself saying, nothing special, to describe so many things in life. And that brings me to my last big complaint, which is that Harry, as a protagonist, is kind of a bore. He's a dude. He has a daughter who's missing, he's looking for her, and that's about it. He's got this strange kind of flat affect, which is partially the voice acting, but partially just the dialogue, and he has a stunning lack of reaction to some truly, truly upsetting things. There are a few times where animation-wise, he has some cool physical reactions to things happening around him, but in terms of his dialogue, he's just so boring. And his reactions when people are trying to tell him what's going on are kind of unhinged. It's this weird kind of unbelieving. Someone tells him the town is sliding into darkness. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That's gibberish. Just like some truly unhinged reactions that don't take anything that he's seen into account.
Did you see those monsters? Have you ever seen such aberrations? Ever even heard of such things? You and I both know creatures like that don't exist.
Yeah. I don't remember this being here before.
Yeah, so I just found his reactions pretty weird and hard to relate to. He doesn't seem at all interested in learning what's going on in the town or how he can prevent further bad things from happening. It's all about missing his daughter. Cheryl? Where's Cheryl? Did you see Cheryl? Cheryl?
Jason! Jason! Jason!
I've also got some thoughts on the story and overall narrative, and a lot of this is probably my own fault of having expectations that were apparently faulty. I always heard or thought that Silent Hill, one of the things of the series, the hallmarks, was that it sort of reflected the protagonist's own, guilt and fears and issues back onto them in terms of what they were seeing and the kind of enemies that they were facing, when that really didn't happen in this game at all. The only really Harry-centric thing that was happening was the fact that him and his wife had found a baby from Silent Hill on the side of the road and had raised it, and Silent Hill had called the baby back. But in terms of Harry and his personality, none of the town really reflects that. I was really hoping for more psychological horror, but as the story started unveiling itself, I didn't find it overly interesting. It was convoluted, involving a cult and trying to get a woman to give birth to the cult's god, and her immolating herself but not being able to die, and then sending out half of her spirit as the baby, which was Cheryl. And then there was all that stuff about the drug trade and the tourist resort, and I didn't really even grasp why that was important. So we get to the end of the game and somehow manage to get the good plus ending. We did look up how to solve the cop accidentally, but the other stuff we just managed to discover on our own in terms of Dr. Kaufman and things. And I do have a problem with that ending. In that ending, you end up defeating the god, monster, deity. Alessa, who's basically the same person as Cheryl, ends up somehow producing a second baby who he gives to Harry, and Harry and Sybil run off with the baby, and then you see that scene right from the beginning of the Attract trailer where they have the baby on the side of the highway and they're kind of making eyes at each other, which, ugh. So I have problems with this for two reasons. One is the fact that Harry's daughter, who he's raised for 7 years, is dead and gone, and he's just like, well, I guess I have this other baby now to replace her. And the other thing is that taking a Silent Hill baby home the first time led to very bad shit happening. Why are you taking home a second Silent Hill baby? Now, the game does end on a positive note. One of the other favorite things for me was that the game ends with credits that are done in the style of a blooper reel, and the credits are just for the characters, not the actual actors playing the characters, but it's just really fun. It's got great music and, gives a little sort of fourth wall breaking, behind the scenes bit of humor after what can be a very bummer ending. And I still think it's kind of a bummer ending because he still has a fucking Silent Hill baby. Also, you get a stat screen at the end, and I love a stat screen. So I spent most of my time playing or watching Silent Hill being pretty annoyed, mostly by the controls, also by some of the characterization and story stuff, and also making fun of Harry every time he saw something and proclaimed, "Nothing special." After the credits rolled, I was so happy to be done with it. I exclaimed that I hated it, whereas my partner, who had almost all the same likes and dislikes about it, exclaimed that he loved it. So we're probably going to end up playing more Silent Hill in the future. I actually really am interested in playing the remake of 2. Honestly, I have fonder feelings about Silent Hill now that I've taken a little step back from actually having to control it or watch someone else control it, because it does do a number of really interesting things. The music's great, it's got a cool intro, the map is amazing, some of the areas are really cool, and I do like a lot of the disturbing imagery. So yeah, I feel like Silent Hill is one of those games where it's cool to talk about and think about as long as you don't actually have to put your hands on a controller. So yeah, those are my thoughts on the original Silent Hill, a game I have been trying to beat for close to 25 years. I'm glad to say I finally finished it and can sort of take that one off of my games to playlist, but I did find the controls ruined most things about it. But let me know what your thoughts on Silent Hill are. What's your favorite in the series? Do you recommend I continue forward with the series? Does it get better from here? I'm pretty sure it does get better from here. But thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.
Hi.
Hi.
Are you bad-mouthing my game?
Yeah. I am.
Silent Hill's a great game. It's the best game we played in 2024.
Is it?
Yeah.
No. I don't think so.
If you want to see more, check out another one of my videos linked here. I have a Patreon if you want to support the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.